It's an honor to be here. Now, he set the bar high, talking about performing at the Punchline, right? I have to share with you that was about 11 years ago, and they haven't called back, okay? So if you're looking for a comedy, I know this is a performing arts center here, but I can be any comedy or singing and dancing. No, but I love to make people smile. So we're going to talk today about something probably a little different than a lot of your classes, but it really fits in, right? Because the university, I just learned even a few minutes ago, dreams made real. Right? Well, we love dreaming, but you can't just dream. We have to work on it. We have to figure out how do we make dreams real. And we're going to be actually talking about that tonight. So the title tonight is Dare to Discover and Live Your Life Purpose. And I love this because I will share with you that I grew up very blessed, great parents, great family. Grew up a cheesehead in the state of Wisconsin. You probably know what that is. And had a lot of great opportunity. And I'm very blessed and thankful. But, at the end of the day, I set off on a track and then had a train wreck and then a track and then a train wreck, and then, right? And we find this sometimes in our careers where we think we're going to go be an accountant. And I went off to college to be an accountant. And I moved to Atlanta in 1987 to work for Price Waterhouse in auditing, and it didn't get much better than that, except that I found out that was not for me. And had to go through the whole iteration to figure out, how I was wired and what was really purposeful. Because here's what I have learned over the years in your career, and we work with, especially at Career Spot, we work with a lot of folks who are unemployed, and a lot of them are recently unemployed, like yesterday or last week. They got notified that their job is over. Thanks for playing the last 20 years, you're gone. And I mean, very emotional. And what we find, though, is that the people who are unemployed are really not the ones that are in the worst place in their career. Here's the worst thing that can happen in your career. The worst thing is to set out with a dream, with a purpose, to get to a certain mountaintop, right? Get that job and that awesome company, right? And you get to the mountaintop of your career, and then you realize, you know what? I'm on the wrong mountain. That's the problem, okay? Because then if you're on the wrong mountain, how do you get to the next mountain? And don't say delta, okay? No. You get to the next mountain by going through the valley, okay, and you get to the next mountain. So actually, that's a big part of my passion, is helping people early on, right, in college especially, to really make sure you know which mountain you're going after, so you end up on the right mountain, hopefully the first time. So we're going to dive into this. We're going to leave plenty of room for questions, time for questions at the end. So why don't I jump in? Now, all of you have received a handout. I'm going to refer to this right out of the gate. The 3 pages here that starts off with defining your life desires. And they probably didn't tell you this in advance because you might not have shown up, but there's going to be homework, right? We're at a university. There's going to be homework here. So what we're going to do is in a minute here, I'm going to walk you through some fairly simple exercises. I'm going to send you off tonight with them for homework. I really am going to encourage you to do this. It's not going to take long. It's going to be about an hour. But what you're going to do is you're going to come out of this with your 1-sentence life purpose statement. Now, let me ask real quick. How many have ever done an exercise where right now today you can tell me in 1 sentence what your life purpose is? Do we have any folks here? Okay, great. So very few. Great. I'm glad you're here tonight. I didn't go through this till about 5 years ago, okay? Now, not that I wasted the first, 23 years of, oh no, more than 23, okay. Do the math. Not that I wasted the first 46 years of my life, but now that I'm 51. But boy, is it amazing now, okay? So let me share with you, okay, life purpose, because the real important thing is to first understand your life purpose and then your career purpose. I think too often, especially in the United States, we get it backwards. It's all about our career and what our career can generate in terms of money, fame, ego, status, right? That kind of drives our life. Well, that's backwards, right? It should be the other way around. My wife is a good example, and she knows I talk about her, so she couldn't be here tonight. But my wife is a pediatric nurse at Scottish Rite on the north side of town, and she's been a nurse for 26 years. And a couple years ago, I said to her, would you ever want to be the nurse supervisor? I'm thinking the nurse supervisor makes more money, probably works less. Well, guess what her answer was? She doesn't want to be the nurse supervisor, right? Why does she not want to be the nurse supervisor? Well, because she wants to touch those kids. And she is gifted, believe me, she is gifted at touching those kids. Because when people, parents go in with their child into Scottish Rite, that's scary. And maybe some of you have been there. That is a scary time. And so my wife, she's not the one doing the surgeries. She's on what I call the touch team, right? She's all about getting the parents and the kids just right, where, hey, everything's going to be all right, and what have you. So why would I or anyone say to her, well, hey, you can make more money being the nurse supervisor. You can work less being the nurse supervisor. Well, no, that's not her calling. Her calling and her giftedness is to be the hands-on nurse, right? So that's really important. That's what we're after. Okay, so I want to share with you, just to kind of give you a quick feel for this. So here's my life purpose that I came up with 5 years ago. You know, honestly, it's not profound, okay? So I, Tom Darrow, exist to glorify God by generously leading others into life-improving connections. So again, that doesn't necessarily mean anything to anybody here except me. And it means a whole lot to me. And when I go to my family and friends and I share that, you know what their reaction is? Yeah, I totally get it. I mean, Tom, that's you. Totally, see it every day. So here's why this is important to me and why this is going to be important to you. Because after you go through these exercises and you come up with your one-sentence life purpose statement, this now becomes a lens that you can use to make key decisions, right? Because in this world, there are a lot of options. There are a lot of paths. We're going to talk about some of these later. There are a lot of shiny objects, a lot of things that look really cool. You can't do them all. You can't do them all. So which one or two are the ultimate one or two that you really should be doing? Well, this is where this can really come into play. So let's dive into this. Let me share with you two other, probably more profound, certainly well-accomplished folks. I think all of you have this as a handout as well, but pretty impressive life purpose statements from two pretty well-known and impressive gentlemen. Okay, so now let's dive in. I want you to turn to this first exercise, defining your life desires. So there are three pieces to this homework assignment. This is the first one, and here's what you do with this one. You're going to go down each of these categories. So we've got financial, vocational or career, social community, family, physical, mental, spiritual, and other. And I want you to spend maybe just a minute or two, not an hour, just a minute or two in each category and say, take financial first. And I want you to write down, doesn't have to be perfect or wordsmith, write down what are your goals? What are your desires in life from a financial standpoint? Could be that you want to retire at a certain age, or it could be that you want to own your own house someday, or it could be that you want to, come back to Clayton State University and get an MBA in HR, right? I mean, that should be one of the goals. Yeah, right. So what are they, right? Maybe you want to start a foundation someday. Maybe you want to give back to your community. A lot of different things, right? Each of you are going to be different. So what are your financial goals? And I've got spots here for 8. You don't have to have 8. You can have more than 8. It's up to you. But you probably should have 1 or 2 or 3 in each one of these. Then you're going to go on to vocation, career, work. What are some of your goals there? How about social community, family? And you're going to go down each one of these, okay? And you're going to just fill them in, okay, one by one. Then what we're going to do is we're going to do the second thing here. We're going to go through each category, and you're going to circle the one in that category that you would say is the number one. This is the top priority, the top desire for me in the financial material area, and then the vocational career work. Okay, so you're going to circle each one. So if you fill out each one of these, you would end up having 8 of them. So you're going to have 8 things circled, right down the page. So that'll be the second step. Then what we're going to do is you're going to look at all the ones you have circled, and you're going to rank those. Which one is number 1? All the way down to 7 or 8. Well, guess what that's going to do? That's going to get you to come out with your number 1 life goal, right? Your number 1 life desire. So that's going to be exercise number 1. So I think that's pretty straightforward. I know you smart people out here, so we'll move on to the next one. Okay, so the next exercise on the next page, you can see there are a lot of words on here. What we want to do with this exercise is we want you to come out with the 3 words on this page that best describe you. Here's probably the way to do it. Go through word by word and say, okay, does that describe me? Not really. Cross it off. Cross off all the words that don't describe you. Then you're going to go back and you're going to find that probably around 20 words are not crossed off. Now it gets more challenging because now you have to go through that list of 20 and say, well, that one describes me but not as well, right? And cross it off, okay? And get it down until you've got about 3. Now, if I go back to my life purpose statement, you can probably guess, and I'll let you in on a little secret. I didn't have 3, I had 4. Okay, so I'll give you the freedom if you have to have 4. So guess what my 4 were? Generous, lead, improve, and connect. Okay, that's how I came up with my life purpose statement. So that's going to be the second exercise, is coming out with your 3 or maybe 4 action words. Now, finally, turn to the third page. This is where you bring it home. So at the very top, you're going to go from exercise number 1, and you're going to put down your top desire. From exercise number 2, you're going to put down your top 3 action words. Then you're going to give it a go. Take a stab at it. The first time, it doesn't have to be perfect. Just get something down that sort of factors in. You don't have to use all 3 words exactly, kind of like I did. I mean, make it what makes sense for you. Because then you're going to, from there, okay, you're going to redraft it, okay, work on it. Then we're going to finally, at some point, we have to say, okay, this is it, right? We're done. And we're going to finalize it. Then we're going to commit it to memory. That's really important. We're going to post it different places, maybe in your car, right, on your mobile device, on the bathroom mirror. Well, I've had people literally type it up or have it painted and frame it, put it on the wall in the foyer of their home. You're going to share it with people. I mean, this is exciting, right? Hey, y'all, this is my life purpose statement right here. And they're going to be like, okay, you know, what have you been smoking? No. But you can just say, oh, I heard a speaker, right? So you're going to get excited over this. You're going to want to share it with people. And most people who know you are going to say, wow, that's fantastic. Guess what they're going to say after that? Now, what are you going to do about it, right? They're going to say, okay, well, yeah. So dreams made real, right? But again, here's the ultimate thing you're going to do with it, what I said earlier. You're going to use this as a lens to make decisions, and that's really huge. Now, there's nothing wrong with revisiting this. I wouldn't say every week or month, but maybe every year. Certainly if you have life changes, right? I got, in fact, last night, my wife and I celebrated our 8-year anniversary. We met through eharmony.com. How about that? Yeah. For years, I was on noharmony.com. I would not recommend that. But thanks to eHarmony, we met, and she was living in Asheville, North Carolina. And so she's a real blessing. I wish she could have been here tonight. So that's my homework for you. That's my encouragement for you. And I mean, this is simple, and it's huge. It's huge. It really is. This is huge. And this is not accounting. This is not HR. This is not nursing. This is life purpose, okay? And I think it needs to start with that, all right? So we'll come back later to questions, okay? But that's the homework. Now we're going to jump, and we're going to bring this to life. We're going to say, okay, where do we go from here with this, right? And I'm going to reference a lot of different things, books, quotes. I'm big into quotes. In fact, my sophomore year at Notre Dame, we had a campus newspaper that came out every day. And I went to the editor my sophomore year, and I said, we ought to have a quote of the day in the paper. And he said, well, that's fantastic. Who's going to do that? I said, well, I'll do it. So for 3 years, I did the quote of the day in the paper, and it still is existing today. They have somebody every day put a quote of the day in the paper. So I'm big into quotes. So here's one of my favorite ones. And it says, stand at the crossroads and look, ask for the ancient path, ask where the good way is, then walk in it, and you'll find rest for your souls. All right? Now let me break this down real quick. It's kind of interesting. So first off, it's talking about being at a crossroads. When are we at a crossroads? Like every day, right? Almost every minute. So what are we supposed to do? Well, first off, it says we're supposed to stand. Well, here's what standing means. It means ready for action. It means ready to move, but don't move, right? So we're supposed to stand. We're supposed to be ready. Then it says we're supposed to look. We're supposed to ask. Well, that gets into mentors, and we're going to come back to some of this later, right? It gets into a lot of different things for you. And we're going to ask where the good way is. And then, and only then, we're going to walk in it. We're going to say, okay, here I go. And you will find rest for your soul. So I thought this was some good wisdom to kind of start off with, all right? I read a study a few years ago that I thought was fascinating. Somebody interviewed folks who were over 100 years old. And they said, wow, you're over 100 years old. If you had 100 years to do over again, what would you do differently? And what they found was 3 different themes kind of came out of this. Okay, one of them was that they would spend more time with their family and friends, probably pretty obvious. Secondly, they would take more risks, maybe not jump out of an airplane, but thirdly, and I thought this was a wow, was they would do more in this lifetime that will span beyond their lifetime, right? Well, that's legacy. And I'll tell you, turning 50 last Christmas Eve, it starts kicking in. As you start having, more friends die and things happen where you're like, whoa, we have limited time here. And those of you, especially who are younger, I know you've heard us old folks say, it's a flash and it goes, life's so fast. It is. It just is. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that I was sitting in a classroom in Notre Dame, and it's a flash. Okay, so that was interesting. So what is legacy, right? What do we need to do to be intentional about your legacy? What do you want to leave behind, right? Family is a big one. A lot of different things that you could leave behind. So we'll be talking about some of those. I read this book years ago, pretty famous book, and I couldn't get past the first sentence of the book. Now, I know you're saying this because you went to Notre Dame and you can't read. I've heard that from some SEC fans over the years. No, but so the first sentence of this book was, it's not about you. And I'm thinking, what? Sure it is. What do you mean it's not about me? And I thought, wow, that's really interesting. It's not about you. And then I started thinking, well, then who's it about, right? And it kind of went from there. So I thought that was kind of an interesting way to start a book. I did finish the book, but I keep going back to the first sentence because I thought that's really what it's all about. Let's talk a little bit about legacy building and build on what we just said a minute ago. So first off, this whole concept of success and significance. Success is about us. Significance is what we can do for others. Now, it doesn't have to be, because I know, today in the world, we see people on TV, they're doing unbelievable things for, masses amounts of people. And we think, oh, gee, I can't do that. I don't have the resources to do that. That's fine. You don't have to set out to think I'm going to change the world, save the world. Here's some advice for you on that. Do for one what you would like to do for many. Okay, start with that. If you say, oh, I'd love to do this for all these people, okay, start with one. Right? Do for one what you would like to do for many. Some of you might have heard the story about the little boy on the beach, and he was walking down the beach and he saw a kind of a pond of starfish that were getting thrown up against the rocks by the waves, and he went over and he said, oh my goodness. So he picked up a starfish and he threw it way out into the water, picked up another one, threw it way out in the water, and this older gentleman came along and he said, son, I see what you're doing there, but son, you're not going to be able to save all those starfish. So with that, he picked up another one, and he threw it way out in the ocean. And he said, you know what, I just saved that one, right? Well, that's it, okay? So do for one what you wish you could do for many. And that'll start a movement. That'll start a trend, okay? That's usually how these things start. How about follower to servant leader? We're going to come back a little bit later and talk about servant leadership. I have somebody, in fact, she spoke here at Clayton State University last night, Tila Jackson. I don't know if anybody heard Tila speak. Tila's worked for us at Talent Connections for 10 years next week. Is her 10-year anniversary. And Tila is a great example of somebody who has been a follower, all her life, but she has become a leader. And it happened because she decided one day, about probably 8 years ago, that she wanted to become a leader. So she studied it. She found some mentors who were leaders. I was one of them. I taught her everything not to do, obviously, and then she, figured out what to do. I'll tell you, last year, Tila, we talked about SHRM Atlanta. Tila was president of SHRM Atlanta, the first African-American female president of SHRM Atlanta in 49 years. Go Tila. Go Tila. So Tila has become a leader. She's gone from, but intentional. Okay, you have to get intentional. You don't just wake up. People always say, in fact, I heard John Maxwell speak about a month ago. And he said, one of the biggest questions I ever get is, are people born leaders or made leaders? And he's like, well, I think they're born. I think leaders are born. And so they're made, right? It is really what it is people are made leaders. They make themselves leaders, okay? They're not just born leaders. So it's important. And then I like this. This is from Stephen Covey's famous book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He talks about circle of influence and circle of concern. And I'll tell you what's happened to us over the years, especially because of television and social media, is that our circle of concern is huge. It's just exponentially, it's huge. In fact, it's out of control. And we hear about some incident in some country that we couldn't even tell you where it is on the map, and we're concerned about it, right? We're concerned about that, and that's good. But can we influence that? Well, again, maybe not today, or maybe not. But let's do for one what we could do for many. So this is a little bit of a challenge, is the circle of concern and influence. But I think the more we are concerned about things that we can influence, well, then the more impact we can have. And one of the key things you'll find in career management that's important is focus, right? You have to focus in on what is it that you can be the rock star in, you can be the superstar in. You know, think of Michael Jordan, right? Michael Jordan, arguably maybe the best basketball player of all time. My wife will also tell you that he's a North Carolina Tar Heel, right? She's a North Carolina Tar Heel. Well, anybody know what he did for 2 years? He took a timeout from basketball, right? Baseball. Went to play for the Birmingham Barons baseball team, okay? He batted .201, hit 2 home runs. Probably the best thing he did was he bought a really nice bus for the team to travel in. Well, does that mean he failed in baseball? No, he didn't fail. He still made the minor leagues. But what did he do? He went back to the NBA and won 3 more championships, okay? So sweet spot, okay. Michael Jordan also wants to play on the Senior PGA Tour someday. He's not gonna. I've seen him play. but he's still good, okay, he's good. So again, that doesn't mean he's a failure. It means he's successful, right, in something else. So that's really important to know. So legacy building, there's some thoughts on that. And then how about career purpose? I kind of like this chart. Career purpose is right in the middle of a lot of different things, right? There are a lot of variables working here. You know, it's got to be something you love, you have a passion for. Isn't it awesome when somebody says, oh, I have a passion for this or for that? You're probably thinking, well, that's not my passion, but good for you, right? Good for you. We see this in the Olympics is probably my favorite example, right? I mean, we see these people on TV from, again, a country we don't even know where it is, but we're cheering for these people, right? Because we know they have put their 4 years of their life into this moment. And so we want them to do great, okay? Even if they're competing against the U.S., we want them to do great. Now, we want our player to do a little bit, and that's natural. But we want them to do great because they have a passion for it, and they put their whole life into it. Mission. I think also purpose looks at, what the world needs, some of those things. One of my favorite quotes is from a book called Wild at Heart by John Eldredge. And in the book, he says, don't ask yourself what the world needs. Ask yourself what makes you come alive. Because what the world needs are more people who have come alive, right? And that's really important. How about being paid for it? Well, that's important too. We see a lot of people come through that they're like, oh, I want to go do this. I want to be a wedding photographer. Well, how much does that pay, right? Or can you pay for your kids' education because you're telling me they're in high school right now, they're about to go to college. So you have to look at, some real motivational factors when you look at your purpose. But see, a lot of things with purpose and career management is you want to dream, but that doesn't mean your dream has to come true today or next year. Okay, we talk about people transitioning to a new job. A lot of them will identify their dream job, but then you have to say, okay, here's my dream job, where am I today and how do I get there? A lot of them can't get there right away. They need more skills, right? They need an MBA from Clayton State University, et cetera, et cetera. Well, okay, great. Well, at least you know where you're trying to get to. Now let's take the journey, let's work there. Let's at least maybe get a bridge job, I call it a bridge job, that gets you closer to the dream job at some point, and you're working toward that dream, okay? So what we're going to talk about now, we're going to break these down, and we're going to talk about how to implement your life purpose and how to manage your career going forward. And I think there are really 4 aspects to this: your skills, your network, and your reputation. And one of the things that hit me, years ago, my parents' generation, my parents' parents' generation, career management was done by the company. They would go to work for a General Mills, General Dynamics, General Motors, General Aviation. They go to work for a general, and they'd be there for 40 years, get the watch, right, get the pension, they were done, right? The company took care of them and took care of their career management. Well, those days are gone, okay? Does anybody know any companies like this anymore? Maybe Chick-fil-A down the road, but not too many, right? So here's one of the interesting things that I think the recession recently has really shown us, is that career management is not on the company. It's on us. It's on us individually to manage our career. This really hit me my first day with Price Waterhouse. So here I am, green, right out of college, moving to Atlanta, Georgia. First day on the job with Pricewaterhouse. I started with about 20 others from schools all over the country here in Atlanta. And at the end of the day, about 3 o'clock, they brought in 3 partners. And we could ask these partners anything we wanted. Partner panel, they called it. And I'll never forget that my father, who had worked at Arthur Andersen for 10 years as an auditor, he said, Tom, I got a little advice for you. He said, try to stay away from banking clients. He said, they're kind of boring, okay? He said, they're all the same. Now, nothing against SunTrust. I know this is the SunTrust. Banks are awesome. We need banks. But just the audits of banks, okay, are kind of straightforward. So I filed that away. Well, I'll never forget the first day in this partner panel, one of my classmates raised his hand. And he asked these 3 partners, he said, I got a question for you. I want to work on banking clients. How do I get on banking clients? And I remember chuckling, thinking, well, you go work on banking clients, because my dad told me I'm staying away from banking clients, right? Well, here's what happened. One of the partners said, I'll take that question. He said, but first, let me ask you all a question. He said, who's in charge of your career? And I'll never forget sitting there thinking, well, wait a minute. Pricewaterhouse should be in. I moved all the way from Wisconsin to Atlanta, Georgia, for Pricewaterhouse to be in charge of my career. Well, guess what his point was? Pricewaterhouse was not in charge of my career. I was in charge of it. Then he went into some tips for how to get on banking clients, if you want to get on banking clients, or how to get on real estate clients, or how to proceed from there. So it was literally the first day of my career that I sort of had the aha that, you know what, the company's not in charge of my career, right? Monster.com is not, right? The federal government, we can go on and on. Who's in charge of our career? We are, okay? So let's talk about that. So here's how we manage our career, through skills, networking, and reputation. So let's break these down. Let's talk about your skills. Okay, how do you enhance your skills? Well, again, the word intentional, the word proactive. We got to go to conferences. Okay, now we see a lot of folks, and some of the stuff you guys will implement when you graduate and get out there. You know, the SHRM conference, SHRM National has several conferences. They're fantastic, but they have one big one. One that this year was in Las Vegas. 15,000 HR folks were there. It's amazing. Well, it costs money. Takes time to get there. Well, I'll ask a lot of HR professionals, hey, are you going to the SHRM annual conference this year? A lot of them will say this. They'll say, oh, my company's not paying for that. Okay, well, that's unfortunate, but who's managing your career? You are. Why don't you pay for it, right? I mean, it's an investment, and it seems to me it's an investment in a pretty good thing, like you, right? So maybe you should be paying for the conference. So, you know, intentionally get out to conferences. And not just conferences in your area. Think broadly. I went to a conference a couple years ago in upstate New York that was just totally different than HR, but it was fascinating. In fact, I'm going to come back and quote one of the speakers later. I'm going to go to one next year that Inc. magazine puts on innovation. So, you know, try to think outside the box there. You know, different training. How about certifications? Things like Kaizen, if you haven't heard of that word, that's the Japanese word for continual improvement. All right. Certifications, we talked about this earlier in HR. There's a lot happening there in terms of the certifications. Those are important, right? Maybe a master's, MBA, PhD. See, I keep giving the plugs for the program. Books and articles, read them, right? Write them. Webinars, okay, your peers, who you hang out with. So a lot of different things you can do to enhance your skills, but the key is you've got to be intentional about it. I'll tell you, the smartest people I know, some of the most impressive people I know are just the continual learners, right? I mean, look at one of our, and I'm not going to get political, but look at one of our presidential candidates who, you know, you might not agree with his politics, or maybe you do, but you got to agree that he's an amazing person, Ben Carson, right? What does he talk about his childhood? And his mother made him read and read and read, and look what he's done, just even in his profession. Pretty amazing, okay? And then how about reputation? Now, this one's a little sticky. Now, he doesn't go to school here, right? He looks like an Auburn guy or something. I don't know, but he doesn't go to school here. No, so reputation. Here's the interesting thing about reputation, right? It takes quite a while to build up a good reputation. How long does it take to destroy a reputation? Yeah, nanoseconds, right? In fact, if I were to sing right now here at Spivey Hall, I would ruin my reputation, okay? It'd be over. My wife and I sing backup. When we sing, people back up, okay? So that's how we sing. So we're not going to go there tonight. But we see this every day. We see famous people saying stupid things or doing, and their reputation, and then immediately they apologize, and then we assess the apology, was it genuine? I mean, it just spirals down, right? And they can't recover from these things. So you have to be all over your reputation. Okay, part of that is your brand. okay? You ink. So how can you do that? You're not going to get a good reputation by just staying at home doing nothing, okay? So you have to kind of promote yourself as part of this, right? And social media could be a platform for that. You could write an article, get out there. I know some people say, oh, I don't have anything to say. Well, sure you do. Absolutely, everybody does. Now, whether someone wants to read it or a lot of people, time will tell. But you have something to say. Maybe speak. I know people, they have a fear of speaking. Well, I'll tell you, I had a fear of speaking. When I was in college, I would not raise my hand for a question or an answer unless I knew the answer. I was 100% sure I knew the answer, right? And then there were times I know the answer, and I was wrong. And it was. But you work through that, and you get used to speaking, right, in front of groups. Conducting a webinar, maybe do that. I'll never forget the day, 2008 I think it was, that I offered to do a webinar for SHRM National. And we're getting prepped, and we're online, we're 5 minutes to go, and they said, oh, Tom, by the way, 850 people have signed up for this webinar. And I said, well, and I was in the basement of our house in Roswell thinking, what? Are you kidding me? Whoa. So there are 850 people. Well, that put the pressure on, right? Maybe write a book, okay? How many have written a book? We have any folks that have written a book? Okay, good. Who wants to write a book? Good, you got books in you, fantastic. And this doesn't have to be a 500-word book, right? I want to write maybe a couple books someday. Haven't had time yet, but I already know the topic, the title. I've got the domain. It's going to be called The Giving Effect. Okay, you've heard of the butterfly effect. When a butterfly flaps its wings, the ripple effect goes out. Well, the same thing happens with giving, and I love to give. And what's interesting, though, is I hate to receive. But what God has shown me is that if I don't receive from somebody who wants to give, I deny the giver the joy that I enjoy when I give. Do you follow that? So I'm going to write a book on that dynamic and then talk about maybe some people who have given, even to a small degree, and it turned out to be something big, and just try to get some movement going, even more so in giving. Okay, and then professional image. Really, I mean, what do you wear? How do you present yourself? What is it you can do? We tell people in career transition all the time. Get yourself game ready. What does game ready look like in terms of going out to interview for jobs? A lot of the folks we work with are, 50, 55, 60 years old. Well, most of them, like me, we could maybe lose a little weight, maybe a little hair color, a little, whatever it might be. I spoke at a church ministry, career ministry a few years ago, and I was talking about resumes and, what to do on a resume. I was talking about this trend that people are being given advice to take their dates off the resume if they're over 50. And people run home, they're like, that's it, that's why I haven't been getting calls. Well, recruiters know that that's not the right approach. Because if you are 55, 60 and you start taking dates off the resume, guess what? As a recruiter, guess what we think? You're old. You took the dates off the resume, right? But the problem is the second thing we think is, what else are you hiding? Or what other game of disclose and not disclose? And the trust level goes down. Well, that's a problem when you're hiring, interviewing. You don't want the trust level to go down. So after I spoke, this lady came up to me, and she was probably mid-50s, totally gray hair, but very well dressed, very high energy, great, very nice person. She said, I got to ask you a question about that. She said, last week, this 25-year-old kid was interviewing me. And in the middle of the interview, he said, ma'am, have you thought about dyeing your hair? She said, I was appalled that he said that. She said, I'm done with that. I'm done dyeing my hair. What does hair color have to do with it? She went on and on and on. When she was done, I said, ma'am, I just met you tonight. You seem very nice. I said, you're right. That was not appropriate for him to say in the interview, but he's right. He's right. Here's what he's right about. Like it or not, in his lens, he's questioning, because you sort of let your hair go in a sense, right? He's questioning whether you're going to be lazy, whether you're going to learn, whether you're going to use technology, whether you're going to work hard. I'm just saying, right? Like it or not, that's sort of the lens that he's using. She's like, oh. Now, I don't know if she went to Kroger that night and for $40 I don't know. And honestly, at the end of the day, we all know people that look really good with glasses or with gray hair or with I'm not saying just if you have gray hair, go, no. But for you, right, what looks good, what doesn't, right? And that's really important. So here's another concept for you. Seek mentors. All through the years, I didn't hear this. What I heard was seek a mentor. What I've learned is that's not enough. There's not one person I know that has all the attributes that I want to sort of strive for and learn from and become. So I have been very blessed over the years to have mentors, a lot of people. Usually people who are older, they've been there, they've been down the road. Before Ann and I got married 8 years ago, we intentionally sought out 5 couples that, at least from the outside looking in, we thought they had a really good relationship and a long-standing marriage. And we sat down with them and we said, you know what, would you share? And we know it's not perfect. We know you've had your struggles, but would you share with us, what works, what doesn't, what can be? And I know my wife isn't here, but she often refers to me as 2 things. One is straight from heaven. Now, straight meaning this way and then that way, I think. And the other thing she'll say is over the top Tom. Well, over the top to me means I'm heading the wrong way. Okay, I'm past the peak, but whatever. So seek mentors, okay? And you got to be intentional again about this. Who are the people that you want to get in front of? You don't necessarily have to go to them and say, would you be my mentor? I know people feel awkward with that. Just start meeting with some folks. Just say, hey, can I buy you breakfast next week? Could be another student, could be a professor, could be somebody at a company or a business, right? Maybe ask your professor if there's somebody they know that could be a mentor for you, right? People are usually honored, right, to be a mentor and to help people that way. So seek out mentors. And then let's talk about your network. Now, this is one of my favorite things, especially because I have a company called Talent Connections and because I'm in the HR space and I'm a recruiter and all that. But here's the thing with networking. It used to be that if you were in sales or you were unemployed, you needed to be a networker. Well, today, you need to be a networker. I don't care what you're in, right? Especially in Atlanta, Georgia, and if you haven't figured it out yet, this is the biggest small town in America. Okay, everybody knows everybody, right? Have you seen the movie and heard about the 6 degrees of separation from Kevin Bacon, right? Right? Well, when that movie came out, I was working for a software company on the north side of town, and I was the head of recruiting. And the person I reported to was the head of HR, who reported to the president of the company. The president of the company was Kevin Bacon's uncle. I'm not kidding you. So I had 2 degrees of separation from Kevin Bacon. It was beautiful, okay? So here's the thing with your network, right, is, sorry, I went too far, is that you have to, again, be intentional with this. Now, we have a tool these days, right, to help with this. What's it called? LinkedIn. So there are 2 types of people in the world these days, those who are linked in and those who are linked out. Okay, now how many are linked out? No, I'm not guessing, right? You got to be linked in. Okay, now LinkedIn hit me about 2 years ago. My wife will tell you. It was during football season. I like to watch college football and pro football. And when I do it, I don't just sit there and watch. I got the laptop right here and I'm doing something, right? So I got on LinkedIn. And about 2 years ago, I had 5,000 first-level connections on LinkedIn. And I thought, well, is that a lot? Is that a little? It was something that had happened just because of what we do. But then it hit me, wait a minute, what if it was 10,000? And what if the additional 5,000 people were HR leaders in Atlanta? Well, that would be good for our business. Because now when we do a search, we have 5,000 more people that notice is going to go out to that, hey, you might be right or you might know somebody. Okay. So I got on LinkedIn in a big way. And I searched HR professionals in Atlanta. Hey, let's connect on LinkedIn. Hey, let's connect on LinkedIn. I just passed over 18,000 first level connections on LinkedIn, right? And I hear from HR professionals all the time. Tom, every time I go out and I see somebody, your picture's right there that, oh, they're connected to Tom Darrow. They're connected to Tom Darrow, So now we can leverage that. It's not something I do or you should do just to say, oh, I got 18,000 connections. No, there's a real business reason for this. There's a real intentional reason to get focused on that, okay? So do things, figure out how to build your network, and then how to cultivate your existing network. Those 2 things. How am I going to build my network? Not just with anybody. I mean, I get LinkedIn connections requests, probably you do too, from the auto mechanic in Sioux City, Iowa. I'm like, no, we're not going to connect them. But if they're, you have to have your criteria. For me, it's anybody in HR. It's anybody in Atlanta. It's anybody who's a Notre Dame alum. It's anybody, kind of have your criteria and connect with those people. And then how do you cultivate the relationships? How do you stay in touch with those people and send them things of value? Keep track of who their kids are and where they went to school. And the next time you see them, you say something that they're like, wow, you remembered that, right? I mean, that shows you care. That's really important. So focus on your network. And then connecting with the business, I'll go through this pretty quick. I know you guys are going to be there here soon. But what are the things you can do at the company to really build relationships? There's a saying we have in HR that people join a company and they quit their boss. So the number one relationship in the company is your relationship with your boss. Now that can change because you could get a new boss, but really focus on that. Build relationships with people within the company is the point here, okay? A couple more things, okay? Leadership, again, be intentional. We talked about that earlier. Innovation, well, this is huge. And here's how you innovate. We were talking about this earlier over dinner. You innovate by making mistakes, okay? But you gotta fail forward, right? Fail often, fail early, we talked about, and fail forward. Okay, that's what any entrepreneur will tell you. I mean, I'll tell you, I probably failed more times than I've succeeded, right? Years ago, the key person that we would talk about here was Babe Ruth, because Babe Ruth at the time had hit more home runs than anyone. And you know what? He had also struck out more times than anyone, right? So that can happen. Work ethic, I mean, to me, this is a baseline expectation. You know, I heard somebody speak recently, they were talking about work-life balance. And he said, work-life balance, what is that? He said, now let's take life. So the opposite of life is death. So work is death. I mean, we have life, death, we have life, work. It was kind of funny, right? But at the end of the day, you know, people say to me all the time, Tom, you work all the time. I get emails from you at night or on weekends. And I'm thinking, I don't work at all. I mean, do I look like I'm working up here? No, I'm having fun, right? I'm doing what I'm called to do. And I don't call it work, okay? I call it ministry. I call it serving people. That's what we're here to do. Integrity and ethics, again, another thing, no compromise right here, no compromise, all the time. Now, there are a lot of great things. I mean, that's nice to say, but there are a lot of gray areas in life when ethically, what's right? I mean, well, that's where mentors, that's where counselors come in, right? There's advice that says that a fool takes their own advice and a wise person seeks the counsel of many, okay? Look in Proverbs, you'll find that. Okay, try, fail, try again. We talked about that. And then patience. I'm going to come back to that in a minute, talk about patience. In fact, I'm going to lead into right here. And here's kind of the finale before we get to some questions. So one day I was thinking to myself, and I was reading, and I read this in the Bible, and it talked about the greatest commandment. And I thought, wow, that sounds pretty important, the greatest commandment. And here's what the greatest commandment is, right, real briefly, is to love God and to love our neighbor. So it's to love, right? So I'm pretty analytical. So I thought, okay, well, so if the greatest commandment is to love, what does love mean, right? Well, I bet some of you know what it is, right? This is the famous verse around love, right? Love is patient, love is kind, it doesn't envy. Okay, I'm not going to read the whole thing. A lot of people use this in their weddings, right? Ann and I used it in our wedding. It was lovely, okay? But here's what hit me when I read this. What's the first thing that it says love is? Patient. I mean, that kind of blew me away. I'm like, what? I mean, I would have thought love is generous or forgiving but patient. I'm thinking, where did that come from, really? But then I thought to myself, now wait a minute, how do I need God to love me? Probably be patient with me, right? That's interesting. So here's what we see in career management and in people living out their life purpose is a lack of patience, right? They want it now, want it yesterday, okay? Want to be CEO now. No, it takes time. Right? It takes time to build the relationships. Relationships take time, right? To build the expertise, et cetera, et cetera. I heard someone recently talk about parenting and time with your children. And through the years, we've heard advice that says, it's not the quantity of time that matters, it's the quality of time. Well, this person said, you know what, that's a lie. That's a lie. It's both. Because if you just say, okay, I'm going to be with my children for these 15 minutes every night and really focus on them, well, first off, that's not enough. But secondly, when you're just around the kids or you're just around your spouse or around your friends, stuff happens, right? Questions come up that's really when real life happens, right? Is when we're just sitting around at Starbucks or having a glass of wine so it's both. So the same thing, not just parent-kid, but boss, subordinate, husband, wife, friends, right? It's about time and quality time. It's both. I won't go into put the cell phones away and all that. I'm not going to preach to you. I know it's not Sunday, but all right. So I mentioned this one earlier. Okay, don't ask yourself what the world needs. Ask yourself what makes you come alive. All right. And then I want to close with this conference that I told you I attended, I guess 2 years ago in upstate New York. And it was a conference. There were about 150 executive coaches there. And if you ever get to have a coach or get to know coaches, they're caring people. They love to coach, and they ask great questions, okay? Coaches are trained how to ask great questions. Well, this lady spoke, and I'd never heard of her. Her name is Lynn Twist. And Lynn Twist, as it turns out, is a global activist for hunger. In fact, she served with Mother Teresa. And she told the story about the day that she first met Mother Teresa. And she was going to meet Mother Teresa at 9 o'clock. Well, guess what? She woke up at 3 in the morning and couldn't fall asleep, right? I bet that would happen to us too. So guess what she did, as any good person would do, especially a good female would do? She got in the closet and she tried to figure out what she was going to wear to meet Mother Teresa. And after 4 hours of figuring out what she was going to wear, it hit her, I don't think Mother Teresa is going to care what I'm wearing. Okay. So she put something on, she went and met Mother Teresa. She ended up creating a ministry and a nonprofit around global hunger with, she was amazing. I mean, it was amazing to hear her talk, just wisdom and experience, it was amazing. So anyway, here's what happened. So at the very end, she answered some questions. The very last question, somebody said, so Lynn, what is happening in the world today? I mean, what's your take on it? And we got terrorism and we got, all this stuff going on. It just seems like things are going south. I mean, what's your take on it? And she paused and she said, hurting people hurt people. Healed people heal people. We need to heal people. And that's all she said. And I sat there and I thought, that is it. That is it. Okay, that is it, right? Hurting people hurt people, and healed people heal people. So we need to heal people, right? So that's really part of my challenge for you and for us is we need to heal people. We need to heal ourselves. We need to heal our country. We need to heal our teams. We need to heal our companies. It's a constant battle. It's a constant struggle. So how do we do that? Because we're going to go out of here tonight and we're going to be, how do I do that? Well, what did I say? We're going to do for one what we would like to do for many. And then you know what? The next day probably you're going to be able to do for a couple what you would like to do for many. And then at some point you're going to do for a bunch that you would like to do for everybody or for many. And eventually you're going to do it for more and more people, right? And it's going to really springboard off itself. Okay, so that's my challenge for you. And I say, let's go. All right. I got in here just for your reference some book recommendations, some of the better books I've read over the last few years. The one on top, The On Purpose Person by Kevin McCarthy, that's actually the one where a lot of the life purpose exercises come from, if anyone wants to go deeper with that. Okay, so now let's open it up. I think we've got about 10 or 12 minutes for questions. And if we can't hear you as well, maybe I'll repeat the question. But anything we talked about tonight or any question you have at all, would love to try to address that. I'll repeat them. Super. What do we got? Raise your hand and I'll call on you. Right here in the middle. Nice and loud.
So I wanted to piggyback on your question before you started, or when you on your slide before the books. I guess going forward, coming out, doing your exercises, how do we stay motivated? Because I understand that the turnaround from our efforts won't be within the next couple of weeks of doing that. So what do you suggest as far as trying to keep it up, trying to get out of bed and remember that this is your purpose and all?
That is a great question. So how do we take our life purpose? How do we stay motivated around our dream, our goal? Because we're probably not going to realize that dream or goal right now or tomorrow or the next day. It might be ways down the road. Well, here's some advice. Use a caterpillar, okay? Take a piece of paper, put it landscape, and draw a caterpillar. Just a head, a body, and a bunch of legs, okay? Now, in the head, we're going to put our dream, our goal, our life purpose, okay? That's the goal. Now we have to back it up and say, okay, along the way, what are all the steps? What are all the victories? What are all the celebrations? What are we going to do along the way to track whether we're on track? What are we going to do to enhance our life purpose and get there? And then what are the things we need to put in place, right, to motivate us? I'll share with you that, I think it's been 3 times in my life that I set out to lose weight, right? And each time I lost 40 pounds. Well, guess what I'm doing? Christmas, right? Okay, we got to get back on it. Here we go. Here we go. So, so I have my way of doing that. But I always thought to myself, you know what? If I had, like the number, right, my weight on the front of our house, like, it'd be a good number because I would be like, I got to get that number down, right? And so what is it? So I actually was in a CEO mentor group. We met the second Wednesday of the month for 4 years. And I went to the group one day and I said, y'all, it's time, okay? I brought a scale in. I got on the scale. And I said, here's what I'm going to do, y'all. Every Wednesday morning, I'm going to get on the scale and I'm going to email you the number. Well, there's accountability right there. I'm going to email you the number. Well, I'll tell you what happened over 4 months. Every single Wednesday, I lost at least a pound. Okay, lost 50 pounds in 4 months, the right way, not starving myself. I mean, eating right, working out, the whole deal, right? And the subject line of my email every Wednesday was, I'm a loser. Okay, well, that was funny to me. Okay, I'm a loser, but I lost weight. I'm a loser, right? You get it. So you got to find ways to do that. You got to get other people to be your accountability partners, and then you'll be their accountability partner, for whatever it is. So that would be the advice, is to get others involved, because we can't do any of this alone, right? Good question. Back over here. Yeah, so what age does your career start taking off, right? For anybody, right? That's your decision. And here's the thing, it's not based on somebody else. It's not based on money. It's not based on a title. It's not based on a corner office. It's based on when you decide that my career's taken off, okay? And then tomorrow you wake up and say, you know what? Today my career's taken off again. And I'm at a crossroads again. And now I'm not saying this is easy. Hey, I struggle with that, and I'll have a bad day just like anybody else. And we have these things that can be awesome and difficult at the same time. They're called clients. Okay, we have clients that, and some are lovely and wonderful, and we can't wait to hear from them. And some are like, have you ever called our competitor? Because I think no. So so you have those things, but yeah, honestly, I think that's where it starts, right? Is with our determination to just say, you know what, here I come. I'm on a mission right now to take our business career spa. And something happened a month ago where a huge recruiting firm here in town called Ronstadt, you might have heard of Ronstadt, okay, purchased one of our competitors. And guess who Ronstadt was using for their outplacement? Career spa. And I'm thinking, what the heck? How come they bought them? And well, guess what they paid for this other company? $100 million. And I said to the head of HR, Jim Link, I said, Jim, you wasted $20 million, because I would have sold Career Spa for 80. You could have had a deal. Maybe 60, maybe, yeah. So I'm on a mission now to figure that out, and to figure out, because we're next, right? Career Spa, we're going to build Career Spa, and, so anyway, I'm pretty pumped up about that. Good question. What else do we have? Over here.
Aside from fun being a factor, what else would you say would motivate you in your career?
Yeah. Well, what motivates, so the question was, besides fun being a factor, what are some other motivators for my career or your careers? And again, I think that's personal. I think that's part of where you want to map it out and say, what are the things that need to be key ingredients in my career success, my career happiness, right? Because career success is not measured by what age you retire or how much money you have in the bank. I think it was ING that had those commercials that, what's your number? You've seen that, right? And we're all, what's the number I need to go retire? And well, no, really at the end of the day, I think of myself, I'm never going to retire. Now there's maybe a point where I don't have to pay the bills anymore of, out of debt and blah, blah, blah. In fact, my wife and I, we had a financial analysis done recently, and he came back and he said, well, Tom, I got good news and bad news for you. And I'm like, wow, great. He said, well, the good news is, he said, I'm projecting that you have enough money to live the rest of your life. I said, wow, what's the bad news? He said, well, I'm projecting you're going to die by Christmas. Okay, so I'm not going to retire anytime soon, but you have to decide, right? What is it for you, right? And what is the legacy, right? What is it, and when people have children, well, right there, you don't have to look much beyond that. That is the starting point of your legacy right there, children, right? And people can't tell me, we don't have children. Okay, my wife and I, we're not going to have children. Just that's how it worked out. But at the end of the day, you can't tell me that parenting doesn't have impact on children. I mean, sure it does. And we know people who are awesome parents, and sure, sometimes kids go astray or adults go astray. But for the most part, parenting has a huge impact on how your kids turn out, right? Good. What else? We have time for a couple more? Good. Right in the middle here, purple shirt.
Everyone is inspired by success, their success, the success of others. And how would you tell us to be motivated by failure? Because when you fall down, it's much easier to stay down.
Sure it
How
is.
would you tell us to pick ourselves back up and continue?
Good question. So you said that all of us fall down. How do we get motivated to get back up, right, and to move on? Again, I think you have to have a support system around you. You have to have friends and family that see you fall down, help you up. I'm not saying it's easy. I have a friend who is about 42, never been married. She wants to be married, okay? She, a couple years ago, was dating someone. She thought this was it, this is the guy, and it didn't work out, okay? And she was devastated. And I talked to her about 2 months later, and I said, Sherry, how you doing? She said, not good. And she told me about this concert she was going to that Friday, and she loved this group. And I said, well, Sherry, I got an idea for you. Go to that concert, okay, and between now and the concert, continue the pity party. When you go to that concert, walk in, have a blast. And when you walk out, pity party's over, okay? You tell yourself, pity party's over, I'm moving on. You know, we say that to job seekers all the time because they come to our 2-day workshop at Career Spa, and a lot of them, the week before, they got terminated. And they didn't see it coming, and they've been working there for, 10 years, 15 years. We had a guy several years ago, he had worked at this company for 30 years. He was about 3 months from full retirement, and they cut him. It's like, wow, he probably had a lawsuit on his hands too. He could have pursued. But here's what we tell those job seekers. Those emotions of anger and fear, and they're real. Okay, I'm not saying, hey, get over it. No, they're real, I get that. And they have to move on, right? And they have to move on. So that's the thing is, you remember the movie, What About Bob? Baby Steps, right? Classic, right? So sometimes that's just what you got to do. You got to do, baby steps today might be getting out of bed. Baby steps tomorrow might be getting out of bed and getting dressed. And baby steps the next day are getting dressed and going out. And you just have to kind of step by step get there. And eventually, you're going to look back and say, whoa. I'll share with you that one of the train wrecks in my career was going to this company and, really for the money. I was happy where I was. This company called up, a little consulting firm called Accenture. You might have heard of it. And they threw a lot of money at me. And I said, finally, yes, I'll take the job. And I got there, and nice people, but the role that I was in was just not the right role for me. And I didn't understand, Well, somebody said to me, Tom, have you ever seen an Oriental rug? And I said, well, sure, we have one. He said, go look underneath it. Have you ever done this? You look underneath an Oriental rug. What does it look like, right? It's a mess. It's a bunch of strings, and it doesn't make any sense, right? Well, look on the top. It's perfect. It's beautiful, right? Somebody say, you know what, Tom, this is how we see the world. This is how God sees the world. I'm like, I get it. Okay, that just helps me. So when things are crazy and I fall down, I get up and I fall, I'm like, what the heck, what's going on? I'm thinking, oh, okay, well, God's got a plan. I don't necessarily know what it is right now, but I'll figure it out later. It's helpful. One last question, right here.
I relocated from Ohio. I worked in human resources there, and when I relocated here to Georgia, I found it difficult to get back into that field here. Other than LinkedIn, what would you say would be a good networking?
Sure. So the question was, you relocated from Ohio, trying to get into the field, get some traction here locally, how do you do that? Well, it's a multifaceted answer, but I think showing up is a big part of it, right? You've got to get out. We give people tips all the time about going to networking meetings, and the first thing we say is you got to go. Now that sounds like, well, duh, yeah. But here's what happens is you say to yourself, oh, next Tuesday there's this networking meeting, and you put it on your calendar, I'm going to go. Well, then Tuesday at about, 1 o'clock, what happens? You start thinking, oh, no, traffic's going to be horrible, and gee, my favorite show's on TV tonight. And all these things, right? And you're starting to justify, and what was I thinking? Why did I put that in my... No, you got to go. You got to go. And here's what happens. You go, you learn some things, you meet some people, you see some people you saw before, and you leave there saying, I'm so glad I went, right? Well, you got to remember that so that the next time this happens, you go again. And maybe you call up somebody and you say, hey, are you going to that meeting? Okay, well, I'm going to go. I'll meet you there. So now you have accountability, right? Because somebody's going to meet you there. I've been to hundreds and hundreds of SHRM meetings over the years, and I'll tell you, the next one, I'll be like, oh, geez, I don't want to, I don't want to go. But then I'll go, and I'll be glad I went, because I'll see some people, learn some things, and then that gives you the motivation to go again next time. You know, it was a long time ago that I started the businesses 17 years ago, and a mentor sat down. He said, Tom, what do you think is the most important aspect of your business? And I said, you know, it's probably my knowledge of recruiting, because I started the company to do recruiting consulting. He said, no, that's not it. I said, okay, well, what is it? You know, he said, it's your network. He said, Tom, you're in the services business. You're in the HR services business. You're in the HR services business in Atlanta, Georgia, biggest small town. It's all about relationships. It's all about reputation. It's all about network connection. So I took that to heart. And I said, you know what, I and Tila, we need to become some of the best known HR leaders, well-respected leaders in Atlanta, not for my ego, but for our business, right, for what we do, because we want to help people, we want to impact people, and we can't do that unless we have clients call us and say, we help these people, right? So we got intentional about that. Well, it has been my honor to speak here at Spivey Hall and Clayton State University. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Well, a big vote of thanks. First of all, I would like to thank Tom Darrow for this really inspiring presentation. I think he has talked about some key life lessons, things that we need to succeed in our lives and careers. As a token of appreciation, we would like to present to Mr. Darrow the Dean's Distinguished Speaker Series plaque, which says, in appreciation of your commitment, time, and willingness in sharing your knowledge and expertise with the students, faculty, and staff at Clayton State University, October 28, 2015.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.